Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something real. Life will test you. It will knock you down with failures you didn't expect, with disappointments you didn't deserve, and with setbacks that feel heavier than you can carry. But here's the truth. Falling is not the problem. Staying down is. Every single person in this room, no matter their background, has fallen before. Some of you are carrying fresh wounds from a failure. Some of you are hiding scars from battles long past. And some of you are afraid. Afraid that if you fall again, you won't have the strength to rise. But let me tell you why you must rise. Because the world doesn't remember those who never stumbled. It remembers those who stood back up. Every great leader, every pioneer, every soldier, every dreamer who changed history had one thing in common. They rose after the fall. This speech is not about pretending failure doesn't hurt. It does. It's about proving to yourself and to the world that no fall has the power to define you. If you stay with me until the end of this talk, you will walk away with the discipline, the courage, and the unshakable will to rise every single time. Failure is not final. It is not the period at the end of your story. It is the comma that forces you to pause, to take a breath, and then to move forward with greater clarity. Too often people believe that when they fall, when they lose, when they stumble in the face of pressure, that moment defines them forever. They begin to see themselves not as someone who failed, but as a failure itself. And that is the greatest lie life can whisper in your ear. Failure is not who you are. It is simply where you are. And where you are is never the end. Think about every achievement humanity has ever celebrated. Every invention, every victory, every work of art, every act of courage. It was born out of a process filled with missteps, rejections, and defeats. The light bulb did not shine on the first attempt. The greatest generals did not win their first battle. The bravest explorers did not discover new worlds without first being lost. If failure were final, then none of these stories would exist. If failure were the end, the world would be silent, colorless, and motionless. But it is not the end. It is the beginning of something greater. What separates those who are remembered from those who are forgotten is not the fall itself, but the decision to see failure as a stepping stone. Each time you stumble, life hands you a piece of instruction, carved painfully but clearly into the surface of the moment. You may not recognize it immediately. You may only feel the sting, the humiliation, the heaviness of defeat. But within that pain lies the most valuable resource you can ever possess: knowledge. Knowledge of what does not work. Knowledge of where your limits currently lie. Knowledge of who you are when tested. And with that knowledge comes power. The power to rise with more strength, more wisdom, and more determination than you had before. I have seen men and women fall in ways that would break the ordinary spirit. Soldiers who lost comrades. Athletes who trained for years only to fail in the final hour. Leaders who carried the weight of a decision that went wrong. Each of them stood at a crossroads facing the same choice you will face in your life: to let failure define them, or to let it refine them. The ones who chose to rise discovered something extraordinary: that failure does not weaken you, it prepares you. It sharpens your resolve, it tempers your character. It forces you to dig deeper into the well of resilience that you did not even know existed. There is a story of a recruit who entered training with all the physical strength you could ask for. He ran faster, swam longer, and pushed harder than most of the others. But in one of the tests, he failed. He was asked to start over. For a man who had known only success, it was crushing. He could have walked away, convincing himself that the system was unfair, that the standard was impossible. But he did not. He accepted the failure as part of his journey. And in doing so, he built something far greater than physical strength. He built endurance of the spirit. And when the time came for him to face the hardest days of his life, it was not his speed or strength that carried him. It was the endurance he had forged through failure. That is what failure gives you if you are willing to rise from it. It gives you depth. It gives you humility. It gives you the capacity to connect with others who are struggling because you have walked through the fire yourself. It strips away arrogance and leaves behind authenticity. People trust those who have scars because scars are proof that you have been tested and survived. And when you rise after failure, those scars become your armor. Rising after failure is not easy. The world does not always cheer for comebacks. Sometimes it laughs at you, sometimes it doubts you, sometimes it even hopes you stay down. But you must remember, the world's opinion is not your compass. The moment you allow failure to be final in your life, you hand over your story to someone else. You let the crowd dictate your ending. And that is not the life of a leader. That is not the life of a fighter. That is not the life of someone who chooses to rise. There is a rhythm to falling and rising. Each fall tests your resolve, and each rise proves it. Over time, you begin to see failure differently, no longer as a crushing defeat, but as a necessary step. You begin to look forward to the lessons hidden in loss. You begin to understand that failure is not a punishment, it is a privilege that gives you the chance to grow in ways success never could. Success can make you complacent. Failure forces you to evolve. Success can blind you. Failure sharpens your vision. Success can inflate your ego. Failure grounds you in reality. If you look back at the moments in your life where you truly grew, where you transformed from who you were into who you are, it was not during times of ease. It was during the falls, during the failures, during the nights you thought you would not make it through. And yet you did. And because you did, you carry within you a story that is more powerful than unbroken success. You carry a story of resilience, and resilience is what moves people, what inspires nations, what changes history. Failure is not final. Those words should echo in your mind when you are at your lowest. They should be the rope you reach for when you are buried in doubt. They should remind you that there is no fall so great, no defeat so crushing, that it has the authority to end your journey. The authority belongs to you, and only you. So the next time you fall, and you will fall, do not see it as the end. See it as the call to rise. See it as the universe shaping you into someone greater than you were yesterday. See it as the fire that tempers steel, as the storm that strengthens roots, as the trial that produces greatness. Because failure is not final. It never has been, and it never will be. And when you rise, not only do you prove this truth to yourself, but you prove it to every person who is watching, every person who is struggling, every person who doubts that they too can rise. You become a living example that the story is not over, that hope is never lost, that strength is found in getting back up, and that more than any success is what will echo long after you are gone. Resilience is a muscle. It is not something you are born with in full measure. It is something that must be trained, stretched, tested, and broken down before it can grow stronger. Just like the body gains strength through repeated exertion, the spirit gains resilience through repeated trials. Each setback you face, each hardship you endure, each disappointment you overcome, adds another layer of durability to who you are. It is not the easy days that build resilience. It is the difficult ones. The days when the weight feels too heavy, the road feels too long, and the outcome feels uncertain. Those are the days when resilience is formed. When you look at the strongest people in history, those who carried the heaviest burdens, they were not immune to hardship. In fact, they were defined by it. What set them apart was that they treated every hardship as training, every pain as practice, every defeat as another opportunity to flex the muscle of resilience. The human body grows stronger when the muscle fibers are torn and rebuilt. The same law applies to the human spirit. Without struggle, there is no resilience. Without hardship, there is no endurance. Without falls, there are no rises worth remembering. The truth is that resilience is not forged in comfort. Comfort makes you soft. Comfort convinces you that the world is kind, that life owes you peace, that effort alone guarantees reward. But life does not operate on that bargain. Life will test you. It will strip you of certainty. It will blindside you with loss. It will confront you with failure, and it will measure how you respond. Some will break under that weight. Others will bend but rise again. And those who choose to rise again and again are the ones who will discover just how strong they truly are. Resilience is not just about standing up after you fall. It is about carrying the lessons of that fall into the future. It is about learning to endure, not once, not twice, but every time you are tested. It is a repeated act, like lifting weight after weight, set after set, until what once seemed impossible becomes routine. The first time you face real failure, it may crush you. The second time you may still feel weak, but you will recover faster. The third time you will begin to notice that you are not as shaken as before. By the 10th time, the 100th time, you will stand tall not because life became easier, but because you became tougher. There are those who imagine resilience as something you either have or you don't. But the truth is that resilience is not fixed, it is earned. No soldier enters training with perfect resilience. No leader begins their journey unshakable. It is the repeated exposure to trials, the repeated facing of fears,
the repeated rising after defeat that builds resilience into their core. It is a process, a discipline, a commitment to never allowing hardship to have the final word. I have seen young men and women, full of potential, crumble in the early days of hardship. Some of them never recovered. But I have also seen those same kinds of young men and women just as broken, just as overwhelmed, refuse to give in. They took their failure, they took their pain, and they used it as fuel. Slowly, day by day, they built a foundation that could not be shaken. By the end of their journey, they were not the strongest on paper, not the fastest, not the most gifted, but they were resilient, and that resilience made them unstoppable. Resilience is not glamorous. It is not about dramatic victories or heroic speeches. It is built in silence, in the small, unseen acts of persistence. It is built when you rise out of bed after a sleepless night. It is built when you take the next step, even though your legs ache. It is built when you face rejection and still show up the next day with determination. It is built when you discipline yourself to keep going, not because you feel like it, but because you refuse to surrender. That is the grind of resilience. That is the slow, relentless growth of the muscle that will carry you through life. And here is the secret. Resilience once built never leaves you. Just as the body remembers strength it once held, the spirit remembers resilience it once practiced. Every hardship you survive becomes stored power for the future. Every obstacle you overcome becomes proof that you can overcome the next. And every time you endure, your threshold for what is possible expands. What once would have broken you becomes a challenge you now accept without fear. That is the compounding effect of resilience. Resilience is also contagious. When you rise after hardship, when you show others that endurance is possible, you give them permission to believe they can do the same. Your resilience becomes a torch in the darkness, a signal to others that they too can continue. Families, teams, entire nations have been lifted by the resilience of one person who refused to give up. Never underestimate the power of your endurance. It does not stop with you. It ripples outward, changing the people around you, giving strength to those who are ready to collapse. But you must understand this. Resilience does not make the pain go away. It does not make the road easier. It does not guarantee victory. What it does guarantee is that you will not break under the weight. It guarantees that no matter how many times you are knocked down, you will rise with more grit, more discipline, more willpower. Resilience cannot be handed to you. It cannot be borrowed. It cannot be faked. It must be earned through fire, through struggle, through persistence. And once it is earned, it becomes the core of who you are. So train it like a muscle. Embrace the small struggles, not just the grand ones. Build discipline in daily acts. Face discomfort willingly, not just when it comes uninvited. Every small act of endurance prepares you for the greater storms of life. And when the storm does come, when the fall feels devastating, you will already have the resilience to stand back up. Resilience is a muscle. Build it every day. Test it every day. Stretch it, strain it, strengthen it, until it becomes unbreakable. Because when everything else fails, when strength fades and hope wavers, it will be resilience that carries you forward. It will be resilience that allows you to rise, not once, but every single time life knocks you down. Every fall carries a lesson. That is the unshakable truth of life, one that becomes clear only after you have been knocked to the ground and forced to rise again. No stumble is wasted. No setback is meaningless. No defeat is without value. Each one of them holds a message, sometimes buried beneath the pain, sometimes hidden behind the embarrassment, sometimes disguised as loss.
And the measure of a person is not whether they fall, because all of us do, but whether they take the time to understand what that fall was meant to teach them. In every failure there is feedback. When you miss the mark, you are given a chance to see where your aim was weak. When you collapse under pressure, you are shown where your endurance must be trained. When you trust and are betrayed, you learn how to discern character more carefully. These lessons are not punishments. They are instructions. They are not meant to destroy you, but to prepare you for what lies ahead. The harsh truth is that without those lessons, you would never grow. Without those corrections, you would walk blind into the future, carrying the same weaknesses that already caused your fall. Some people resent their failures. They bury them, deny them, or try to forget them. But the wiser path is to examine them closely, to ask what exactly went wrong, To pull apart the mistake, the decision, the moment of weakness, and to hold it up as a mirror. In that reflection, you see the truth about yourself. Not the polished version you present to the world, but the raw and honest version revealed by failure. And once you see that truth, you can begin to sharpen it, refine it, make it stronger. That is the power of the lessons carried by every fall. The lessons are not always obvious, and they are rarely easy. They may come in the form of humility, reminding you that you are not invincible. They may come as patience, showing you that some victories are not won overnight. They may come as discipline, teaching you that consistency matters more than bursts of effort. And sometimes the lesson is simply resilience, the understanding that even after the hardest impact, you are still capable of standing up. Each of these lessons adds another layer to who you are. They shape you into someone wiser, someone more grounded, someone less likely to be broken by the same fall again. Consider the lives of those who left their mark on history. Not one of them walked a straight line to greatness. They stumbled, they faltered, they failed. But in those failures, they discovered what no classroom, no book, no mentor could ever fully teach them: the irreplaceable lessons of lived experience. A commander learns from a failed maneuver that cost him the battle but saved him in the war. An inventor learns from countless broken prototypes until one finally works. A leader learns from early mistakes in judgment that later sharpen their wisdom. Every fall in their story became a chapter of instruction, guiding them toward the person they were destined to become. These lessons are not limited to the grand stage of history. They exist in every life. The student who fails an exam learns how to study with discipline rather than hope. The athlete who loses a race learns the importance of preparation, strategy, and heart. The entrepreneur who watches their first business collapse learns the brutal but invaluable truth about persistence and adaptation. The parent who makes a mistake with their child learns tenderness, patience, and understanding. Every fall, no matter how small or how devastating, is a teacher whispering truths we could never hear in victory. But the danger lies in ignoring the lesson. If you refuse to learn, you guarantee that the same fall will come again. Life has a way of repeating the test until you pass it. The same challenges return in new disguises. The same mistakes present themselves in different forms until you finally see what they are trying to teach you. To rise without reflection is to walk into the same trap again, but to rise with understanding is to walk forward with wisdom that cannot be taken away. There is a quiet strength in those who collect the lessons of their falls. They do not rush to hide their failures. They do not carry shame in their scars. They carry perspective. They know that each scar is a reminder of a lesson learned, a sign of growth, a marker of survival. And when others stumble, they become the voice of encouragement, the proof that even in failure there is value. Their experience becomes a light for others, showing that every fall is not an end, but a classroom. Every fall carries a lesson, and the greatest among us are those who never stop being students. They learn from the ground as much as they do from the heights. They understand that the road to mastery is paved with mistakes. They do not fear failure, because they know that failure will leave them stronger, wiser, and better prepared. And when you carry that understanding within you, you begin to walk through life differently. You stop seeing failure as the enemy. You start seeing it as a guide. So when you stumble, when you fall, when you taste the bitterness of defeat, remember that you are not being punished. You are being taught. You are being shaped. You are being handed a lesson that no success could ever give you. And if you are wise enough, humble enough, disciplined enough to pay attention, that lesson will become the stepping stone that lifts you higher than you ever thought possible. Every fall carries a lesson. Carry those lessons with you, because they are the most valuable treasures life will ever give. And the day will come when you look back and you will realize that those lessons, more than your victories, were the foundation of your strength. Small victories matter. They matter far more than most people are willing to admit. In a world obsessed with grand achievements, with medals and trophies, with titles and headlines, the quiet power of small victories often goes unnoticed. Yet it is those very victories, those small, almost invisible wins, that carry you forward when the mountain ahead looks impossible to climb. They are the foundation upon which great accomplishments are built, the proof that progress is being made, and the fuel that keeps you moving when fatigue and doubt whisper that you should stop.
The truth is that greatness is never achieved in a single moment. It is not born from one grand decision, one heroic act, or one stroke of fortune. It is forged in the accumulation of countless small victories that, when stacked together, create momentum so strong that nothing can stand against it. The runner who crosses the finish line first did not begin there. They began with the small victory of lacing their shoes, of running 1 mile, of shaving seconds off their time. The soldier who makes it through the most grueling training did not endure it all at once. They endured it through small victories. 1 push-up, 1 mile, 1 cold night survived, 1 long swim completed. Each of those victories might seem insignificant at the time, but together they are the story of resilience and perseverance. The small victories matter because they prove to you that you are capable. They build confidence. They remind you that progress is being made, even if it is not yet visible to the world. When the larger goal seems too far away, when the finish line looks distant and unreachable, the small victories keep you anchored to reality. They say to you, you may not be there yet, but you are further than you were yesterday. This is why discipline is so closely tied to small victories. Discipline is nothing more than the repeated act of choosing the small victory over and over again. Waking up when you do not want to, showing up when no one is watching, finishing the task when every part of you wants to quit. Those are small victories. They do not make headlines, they do not earn applause, but they build something far more valuable: character. And character is what sustains you when the stakes become high and the world demands more of you than you thought you had to give. There is a saying among warriors: if you want to change the world, start by making your bed. It sounds almost trivial, but the principle is timeless. That small victory at the start of your day sets the tone for everything that follows. It says that no matter how chaotic, how unpredictable, or how difficult the day may become, you began it with order, with focus, with discipline. One small victory leads to the next, and by the end of the day, those small acts add up to something powerful. The knowledge that you did not surrender to laziness, to chaos, to despair. You fought, and you won, even in the smallest of battles. Small victories also matter because they are attainable. No one can guarantee you the great triumphs in life. No one can promise you wealth, fame, or recognition. But you can always secure the small wins. You can choose to face one fear today. You can choose to complete one difficult task. You can choose to take one more step when you feel like sitting down. And if you keep stacking those wins day after day, eventually the great victories will take care of themselves. The summit will be reached not by leaping to the top, but by the patient accumulation of small, steady steps. History is filled with examples of how small victories shaped destiny. Armies that could not win the war in a day won it by securing one hill, one bridge, one stronghold at a time. Movements that seemed powerless grew strong because each small victory brought more voices, more courage, more belief. Leaders who appeared ordinary transformed into legends because they mastered the discipline of daily wins. Even in the most personal of battles, overcoming addiction, rebuilding after loss, regaining strength after injury, the small victories are the turning points. One day sober, one day showing up, one day choosing hope over despair. Those are victories worth celebrating because they are the victories that make the greater triumph possible. The danger is that small victories are easy to dismiss. They are quiet, they lack glamour, they often go unnoticed. But the truth is that dismissing them is like dismissing the bricks that build a fortress. You may think one brick does not matter, but without it, the wall cannot stand. Each small victory is a brick in the structure of your strength, your resilience, your character. Without them you collapse. With them you are unshakable. What makes small victories even more powerful is the momentum they create. Success builds on success. One completed task makes the next one easier. One step forward builds the confidence to take another. One win, no matter how small, changes the way you see yourself. You begin to believe in your ability to endure, to fight, to rise. And belief is the engine that drives you to greater heights. When you believe you can win the small battles, you begin to believe you can win the great ones too. In the darkest of times, small victories can even be the difference between despair and survival. When everything feels lost, when the weight of failure and defeat seems overwhelming, the ability to claim one small win can reignite hope. Surviving one more night, taking one more breath, refusing to quit for just one more moment. Those are victories too. And sometimes those small victories are what carry you through until the storm passes and the light returns. Small victories matter because they remind you that progress is possible. They remind you that you are not powerless. They remind you that each day offers you the chance to rise, to improve, to take back control. And when those victories accumulate, when you look back at the path you have walked, you will see that the mountain was not climbed in one great leap, but in the steady, relentless accumulation of steps that seemed small at the time, but together carried you to the summit. So never overlook the power of the small victory. Celebrate it, treasure it, build upon it. Because when the great triumph finally comes, when you stand victorious before the world, you will know that it was not one moment that brought you there. It was every small victory along the way. Discipline over discouragement. That is a principle that separates those who move forward from those who remain stuck. Life will always present moments where discouragement feels overwhelming. The weight of setbacks, the sting of rejection, the exhaustion of effort that seems to lead nowhere. These are realities every person will face. Discouragement whispers that you are not enough, that the task is too difficult, that the dream is too far away. If you listen long enough, you will stop. You will surrender to the lie that struggle is pointless. But discipline speaks louder than discouragement, if you allow it to. Discipline does not care about how you feel in the moment. Discipline does not wait for motivation, nor does it bend under doubt. It simply demands that you take the next step, no matter how heavy your heart feels, no matter how unclear the path looks. The power of discipline is that it gives you a structure when emotions threaten to undo you. Discouragement thrives in chaos. It feeds on uncertainty, on the lack of direction, on the absence of progress. But discipline imposes order. It sets routines. It establishes habits. It draws clear lines that guide you forward even when your spirit wavers. A disciplined person does not allow discouragement to dictate their actions, because their actions are already decided by principle, by commitment, by the unshakable decision that quitting is not an option. Every great achievement you can point to in history was built not on bursts of inspiration, but on the daily discipline of men and women who refused to yield to discouragement. Soldiers who pressed on despite exhaustion and fear. Scientists who tested, failed, and tested again despite ridicule. Athletes who trained before dawn while others slept, ignoring every excuse to stay in bed. These people were not immune to discouragement. They felt it like everyone else. The difference was that they had trained themselves to obey discipline rather than emotion. Discipline has a unique way of transforming pain. When you are discouraged, the effort ahead feels meaningless. But when you are disciplined, every small act becomes a victory. Rising early when you want to sleep, finishing a task when you want to quit, pushing through the last repetition when your muscles burn. These are acts of defiance against discouragement. They remind you that your will is stronger than your weakness, and each time you choose discipline, you prove to yourself that discouragement cannot control you. Discouragement is temporary, but discipline is lasting. Feelings change. They rise and fall with circumstance, with mood, with the outcome of the moment. But discipline remains steady. It does not ask whether you feel ready, whether you feel strong, whether you feel hopeful. It commands that you act regardless. And by acting even in discouragement, you build momentum. That momentum creates results, and those results eventually restore the very motivation that discouragement tried to steal from you. The world often celebrates talent, but talent without discipline collapses under pressure. The world admires inspiration, but inspiration without discipline fades when tested by failure. Discipline is the backbone, the structure that carries you through discouragement, through fatigue, through doubt. It is what allows you to rise even when the weight of failure feels unbearable. Because discipline does not ask whether you can succeed, it only asks whether you will continue.
It is easy to be disciplined when everything is going well. It is when discouragement arrives that discipline shows its true worth. On the days when you lose, when your effort seems wasted, when your confidence is shaken, those are the days that test whether your discipline is real. If you can rise on those days, if you can act according to principle rather than emotion, then no amount of discouragement can defeat you. There is a rhythm to discipline, like the steady beat of a drum. It pushes you forward step by step. You may not see progress immediately, but the rhythm carries you forward. Discouragement may shout loudly, But discipline beats consistently, and consistency always outlasts despair. That is why discipline is more important than motivation. Motivation may get you started, but discipline keeps you moving when motivation disappears. Every person who has endured hardship knows this truth. Discouragement is inevitable, but defeat is optional. The deciding factor is discipline. It is the habit of continuing when others stop, the courage to rise when others give in, the focus to act even when you feel broken. And over time, that discipline transforms you. It strengthens your character. It sharpens your resolve. It builds a foundation that discouragement cannot shake. Discipline over discouragement is not about denying the pain, the struggle, the doubt. It is about acknowledging them and choosing to act anyway. It is about recognizing that your feelings are real, but they do not control your future. Your choices do. And if you choose discipline every time discouragement appears, then you will always find yourself moving forward, no matter how small the step. Success belongs not to the strongest or the most talented, but to the most disciplined, the ones who showed up when others quit, the ones who pressed on when others gave in, the ones who refused to be defined by discouragement because they had already chosen to be defined by discipline. And if you live by that principle, if you put discipline above discouragement in every battle you face, you will discover a strength within yourself that no setback, no failure, no defeat can ever take away. Courage is found in rising, not in never falling. The world often paints courage as the absence of failure, as though the brave are those who never stumble, never doubt, never collapse under the weight of life's battles. But the truth is far different. Courage does not live in a flawless journey. It does not grow in perfection. Courage is born in the moments after failure, in the decision to stand when every part of you aches to remain on the ground. It is the act of rising, again and again, that proves courage lives within you. To never fall would mean you have never been tested. It would mean you never ventured far enough, never reached high enough, never risked enough to expose yourself to failure. But those who live without risk, who shelter themselves from falling, never discover what they are truly capable of. Their courage remains untested, fragile and unformed. True courage belongs to the one who risks, who stumbles, who bleeds and still chooses to rise. That rise, that act of defiance against defeat, is the clearest expression of bravery you will ever see. Every fall brings with it an invitation to courage. You may feel the sting of humiliation, the weight of disappointment, the suffocating voice of doubt. You may hear the whispers that tell you to stay down, to accept that you are finished. Yet courage is the refusal to listen to those whispers. It is the voice inside that says, "Not yet, I am not done, I will rise." And when you answer that voice, you step into the arena of the courageous. History's bravest figures did not walk paths free of failure. They were not spared from defeat, or spared from despair. They fell, sometimes harder than most could endure, but their courage was revealed in their response. A leader disgraced in one battle rose to fight the next, proving that failure could not erase his vision. An explorer lost to storms and starvation pressed forward, showing that no fall could extinguish his will. A reformer imprisoned and silenced emerged stronger, carrying his cause with more conviction than before. Their greatness was never in avoiding the fall, but in rising when they had every reason to stay down. Courage is not loud. It is not always accompanied by cheers or recognition. More often it is quiet, unseen, carried out in private moments when no one is watching. It is the decision to keep moving forward after rejection. It is the strength to face another day of struggle when the last one nearly broke you. It is the willingness to stand up, dust yourself off, and continue the fight, even when victory still looks distant. That rise, invisible to the world, is courage in its purest form. Falling teaches you humility, and humility is the soil where courage grows. When you fall, you realize your limits. You are reminded of your weaknesses, and in that humility you discover the choice: accept defeat, or rise in courage. Those who choose to rise do so knowing they may fall again. They accept the risk of future pain, future failure, future scars, and still they stand. That acceptance of risk, that choice to keep going despite it, is what makes courage so powerful. The beauty of courage found in rising is that it transforms you. Each time you stand back up, you become stronger, more resilient, more unshakable. You begin to carry a confidence that cannot be given, only earned through struggle. It is not the shallow confidence of one who has never been tested. It is the deep, unmovable confidence of one who knows they have fallen, knows they have suffered, and knows they have survived. That kind of courage does not fade, and it cannot be faked. Courage found in rising also inspires others. When people see someone who never falls, they see someone distant, unreachable, unrelatable. But when they see someone who has fallen and still rises, they see hope for themselves. They see that it is possible to endure, possible to fight, possible to rise, even when the odds seem insurmountable. Your courage becomes their courage. Your rise becomes the proof that they too can stand. Falling is not weakness. Staying down is. The courageous are not those who never falter, but those who rise in spite of faltering. The scars you carry, the bruises you bear, the weight of your failures, all of these become badges of courage when you choose to rise again. They tell the story of a person who was tested, who was beaten down, but who refused to give in. Courage is not about certainty. It is about action in the face of uncertainty. It is about rising when you cannot guarantee success, when you cannot predict the outcome, when you know that falling again is a very real possibility. That is why courage commands respect, because it requires vulnerability, risk, and sacrifice. To rise is to expose yourself to the possibility of more pain, but also to the possibility of victory. The truth is that falling is inevitable. No matter who you are, no matter how skilled, disciplined, or prepared, you will stumble in life. Courage is not about pretending otherwise. It is about preparing yourself for that moment, deciding beforehand that when it comes you will rise. That decision, made quietly in the heart, long before the fall, becomes the anchor that holds you steady when the ground disappears beneath your feet. Every rise is an act of courage, and every rise builds upon the last. Over time, those rises define you. They become your story, not the falls, not the failures, not the moments when you were broken, but the moments when you chose to rise. That choice, repeated again and again, becomes who you are, a person of courage. Courage is found in rising, not in never falling. It is not about walking a flawless path, but about choosing to stand each time you stumble. It is about proving, not to the world but to yourself, that no fall is final, no defeat is permanent, and no obstacle is greater than your will to rise. And when you live with that truth, when you carry it into every battle, you will find that courage has been with you all along, not in your perfection, but in your persistence. Rising inspires others. Every time you stand back up after being knocked down, every time you refuse to let failure define you, every time you choose persistence over surrender, you do more than save yourself. You light a torch for those around you. Human beings are wired to draw strength from one another. We watch, we listen, we mirror. When one person rises in the face of hardship, it sends a message that is louder and more powerful than any speech, any command, or any promise. It says if they can rise, so can I. This is why your rise matters, even when it feels small, even when you believe no one is watching. The truth is that someone always is. A child looking to a parent, a teammate looking to a leader, a friend looking to another friend. Strangers you may never meet may one day hear your story and find courage in it. The act of rising is not a solitary act. It carries ripples outward, touching lives far beyond your own. You may never see the full reach of your resilience, but it will be felt. Think of the people who have most inspired you. Were they perfect? Did they walk through life untouched by hardship? Or were they scarred, tested, broken, and yet still standing? The figures who truly move us are not those who never fell, but those who fell deeply and rose anyway. We respect them not because they avoided pain, but because they faced it and chose to continue. Their rise gives us permission to believe that our own struggles are survivable, that our own battles are worth fighting. When you rise, you carry more than your own weight. You carry the hopes of those who are watching. You become evidence that resilience is possible, that courage is real, that defeat does not have the final word. In a world where so many are tempted to give up, that evidence is priceless. One person's endurance has the power to ignite endurance in countless others. One act of rising can spread like fire through hearts that are weary, discouraged, or broken. There is a strength in leadership that does not come from orders or authority, but from example. Leaders who rise when they fall earn loyalty that cannot be bought. Their people follow them not because they are untouchable, but because they are human, because they stumble and bleed, and yet still press forward.
That example teaches more than any command ever could. It teaches that failure is survivable, that setbacks are not shameful, and that the measure of a person is found in their response to adversity. Rising inspires because it is rare. Many people fall and stay down. Many people surrender to discouragement, to fear, to the comfort of giving up. To rise against that tide requires strength that not everyone finds. And when you do find it, when you rise where others would not, you stand out as a beacon. People take notice. They see in you something they long to cultivate in themselves. You become a reminder of what is possible, and possibility is the greatest gift you can offer another human being. The inspiration you give when you rise does not always need words. Sometimes it is enough simply to endure, to continue, to persist. A soldier who rises after losing a battle speaks volumes without opening his mouth. A parent who rises after hardship teaches their child resilience without a single lecture. A survivor who rises after devastation offers hope without a single sentence. In those rises there is power that words cannot touch. Your rise can also change the future in ways you cannot imagine. History is filled with stories of people who rose not just for themselves but for others. Their courage became the foundation for movements, for victories, for freedoms that outlived them. They may have thought they were simply standing for one more day, enduring one more trial, but their rise inspired generations. They became proof that one act of resilience can echo across time, shaping lives that had not even begun. This is why giving up is never just about you. Staying down robs others of the example they may desperately need. Somewhere someone is waiting to see if you will rise, because your decision will influence theirs. Your persistence may save them from surrender. Your courage may breathe life into their despair. When you rise, you are not only lifting yourself, you are lifting countless others. Even if you never see their faces or hear their names, rising inspires because it embodies hope. Hope is not born in the absence of struggle, it is born in the presence of it. When people see you rise, they see that hope is still alive. They see that no matter how deep the fall, there is a way back to strength. Hope is the most powerful force a person can carry, and your rise is living proof of it. The legacy you leave will not be measured by how perfectly you walked through life, but by how often you rose when you fell. Your rises will be remembered long after your failures are forgotten. People will not recount the times you stumbled. They will remember the times you stood again. That memory, that inspiration will outlast you. It will ripple through the lives of others, encouraging them to rise in their own battles, passing strength from generation to generation. Rising inspires others because it shows what is possible when the human spirit refuses to be broken. It proves that defeat is never final, that resilience is within reach, and that courage can be found in every heart willing to rise. And when you rise, you carry not only yourself forward but countless others who see in your rise the reflection of their own potential. So rise every time you fall, not just for yourself but for those who need your example. Rise because someone is watching. Rise because your story may become the light in someone else's darkness. Rise because the world needs living proof that the human spirit cannot be kept down. And know this, every rise you make, no matter how small, may be the very rise that gives another person the strength to continue their own journey. Every fall carries with it the temptation to stay down, to surrender, to accept that the journey has ended. But each rise carries something far greater, the chance to prove to yourself and to the world that you are stronger than failure, braver than fear, and greater than defeat. To rise every time you fall is to live with resilience, to walk with courage, to lead with example, and to inspire others with hope. Your scars do not diminish you, they define the battles you've endured. Your failures are not chains, they are stepping stones that shape the person you are becoming. And every rise you make writes a story far more powerful than any stumble ever could. The measure of a life is not in the number of times you fall, but in the relentless determination with which you rise. Rise for yourself, rise for those who watch, rise for the ones who will one day draw strength from your example. Rise because the human spirit was never meant to stay down. Rise because within you lies the strength to stand again, no matter how hard you fall. So let the world see, let your story echo, and let your life declare this truth. You may fall 1,000 times, but you will rise 1,001. That is the mark of resilience. That is the essence of courage. And that is the legacy of those who choose to rise every time they fall.